Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the Alpha Girl Confidence Podcast. In this conversation, I sat down with Whitney Otto, who is a U.S. World Rowing Champion, a mom, an author, and a seasoned coach and facilitator who has worked with groups and individuals for more than 20 years. In this conversation, we talked about how negative body image often stems from past experiences, unmet needs, and societal conditioning. We talked about how athletes can prepare for bad body image moments and turn those into opportunities for mental toughness. We talked about the societal pressures and how injuries also play a role in competitive environments and shape body image issues for women. And we talked about some practical strategies that not only female athletes, but anyone who has a body can adopt to build a collaborative and empowering relationship with their bodies. So this was such an amazing conversation, not only for girl athletes, but we talked a lot about just in general, developing a better relationship with your body for anyone who has a body, which if you're listening to this, you have a body. So I'm excited for you to dive into this conversation. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Whitney Otto. Hi, Whitney. What's up? Welcome to the Alpha Girl Confidence Podcast. I'm super excited for this conversation and diving deep into all things body image with you.
I'm here for it.
So let's kind of start with an intro, right? Like you and I, this is the first time you and I have spoken, right? We spent a couple minutes before we hit record, but I'd love to know a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your past, what you currently do, and then why do you do what you currently do? Kind of how did you get into it? What was your journey that led you up into this point in your work?
Great. Well, I'm currently an executive coach and consultant. So the calls I've been on today, how do they relate to this podcast? I've had I work primarily with female leaders, and they are up against, bias in the workforce, and they are up against old patterns within themselves. So, one of the things we look at is like old patterns within ourselves. Like one pattern might be, if you don't get what you want from the leaders around you, I did something wrong, instead of, oh, there's something wrong in these circumstances or the way I'm being communicated with. Right. So I'm very passionate about working as an executive coach and helping people solve problems and stay true to their own value and take care of themselves in the process. Because whether it's in athletics or in corporate America, we can often go against ourselves to get results, thinking that's taking care of ourselves, because that's what we've been taught. So that's a lot of what the book is about.
For sure.
How that plays out in our bodies, and in corporate America, that plays out in our bodies as well when we disavow them, go against them, overwork them. They're the last on the list to get taken care of. So that's what I currently do now. I also have a podcast called Untrained, which speaks to a lot of those things, and the unlearning part of growth. Like growth is often unlearning as well as training ourselves. So if I back up, the two experiences, that led me here, I was on the women's national lightweight rowing team, and I was a world champion at one point, an alternate for the Olympics at one point, and that was a very healthy and unhealthy experience simultaneously for me, right? But sports are profound. They're life changing, and I wanted to continue that, and I went in to become a therapist because I loved working with people, but I missed the team and I missed the goal oriented way of working. So for me, coaching really blends those worlds, like the sort of ambition and the goal orientation of athletics and the depth of psychology. So that's a little bit about me. And the book came from my years, like the book originated my years working as a therapist in eating disorders and working with a colleague, and we started working on our own negative body image, found some tools that worked and shared them.
And I love it because it's like this conversation isn't just relevant for, athletes, but like I pretty dang sure that every woman, and probably every person, but for sure every woman at some point in their life has struggled with some sort of body image, right? Negative body image. And so like one thing in your book and on your website and stuff like that is you guys say that, and correct, I'm paraphrasing, but something around body image having better body image is like going to couples therapy, something like that, right?
Yeah, so we talk about it as...
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I love watching that video of you guys talking about that.
Well, first of all, we say everybody has a body and everybody has feelings about their body. Because
yeah, exactly.
It's literally the longest relationship you will have in your life. So
we
think about our work as couples therapy for you and your body image.
Yeah,
and when we say couples therapy for you and your body image, we're already making a distinction that's separate from what most people believe. Most people think my body is my body image. They are one and the same. They're inextricably connected.
Yeah.
And our theory and what we've seen from our work is, no, they're different. You have a body, and then you have a body self, which we kind of nicknamed, we nicknamed it the body self, which is sort of how we feel about our body and what we've been told about our body and what beliefs we have about what our body needs to look like, and all the reflections back about our body and our value we've had in our lives. So what we like to do is help people see them as two distinct things, and start to cultivate a relationship with the body self that is shaped, which is how we see ourselves.
Yeah, and I remember the video I was watching, you and Deb talking about, right? Like in a couples therapy, you go there to learn about each other more and better connect with your partner. And it's the same thing with this, right? It's like you're learning to connect more with your body and to learn its language and not just try to fix it, but learn how to communicate with it and learn from it. And I really love that part, because I believe that our bodies and the feelings we have in general and about our bodies can really teach us so much.
100%.
So I kind of mentioned this a little bit before we hit record, but you guys say, right, that negative body image often stems from past experiences, unmet needs, and societal conditioning. So I want to break each one of those down a little bit more. So can you talk a little bit more about, let's first start with the past experiences thing. How does our negative body image a lot of times stem from those, past experiences?
Yeah. Well, what we find in our work is that very often, we have caregivers, and our caregivers are earliest mirrors. And we like to intentionally use those words, because they're reflecting back to us how much we're valued, how much our needs matter, and all sorts of things about who we are. But the challenge is not all of our caregivers had what they needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Or were given that themselves. So they may be functioning at the absolute best of their ability and not able to mirror us accurately. Sometimes there's addiction in the family, there's trauma in the family, lots of kids in the family. There's so many reasons for that. But when we aren't reflected accurately back who we are and how much our needs matter, we often will then try and create value in ourselves. And we as mammals are hardwired to belong to our environment. So we talk about shape-shifting. So maybe, I may be a really naturally loud kid, but it's more acceptable in my family to be quiet. So I will shape-shift in that way. Maybe I like to read, but when I help out, I get I feel more valued. So there's this early shape-shifting that we get rewarded for, or we better belong to our family, which again, we as humans need. And then very often that morphs into, we have a society that says, if you look this way, if your shape is this way, if you blah, 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 here are the promises. So if we don't feel seen, and if we don't know how to regulate our emotions, or if we don't know a whole variety of things that we need sort of as humans to function, we may look for it in other places. And I think this happens in athletics, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So when you've got, and this is why the whole athletics and body image thing is just so endlessly interesting and fascinating and tragic too, really, is that it, particularly in sports, and I think increasingly in sports, now that the media has got a hold of women's bodies in sports, that how we look and our performance are getting more enmeshed,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So it can feel like higher stakes, and it can feel like a way to belong and to feel valued, and that's so compelling for every single human. So
Yeah.
I said so much there. Pull
No, I
on
loved
any
it.
thread you want.
I mean, yeah, I think the societal pressures, especially for female athletes, is huge, right? Societal pressures, but also, and every sport's a bit different in terms
Yes.
of, like performance. Like running can be a huge challenge versus like soccer for me. It was never like, oh, I have to be a certain weight, right? But a runner or say a gymnast or something like that, I think like performance is can be such a big part of it for athletes. So how do you see, I guess my question is like, what are some ways that an athlete can balance a healthy body image with also knowing that a healthy body image is going to help them to perform, right? Like how do those two go hand in hand, and realizing that like having a negative body image and trying to conform is actually going to hurt your performance?
Well, I mean, I used to do a lot of work around just simply like physiology and,
Yeah.
doing work with nutritionists and sports, like sports medicine. Like there are facts, when we
Yeah.
don't get our period, what's going to happen to our body, to our performance over the long period. So
Yeah.
just getting really factual about what happens when we don't have the energy available, that you can get away with it in the short term. It's much like, not getting enough rest or taking care of yourself in corporate America. You can do it for a short period of time,
Right.
but it will impact your performance.
For
So I
sure.
think starting from there, educating people is really important, and just understanding what your body needs to perform well, because ultimately that's what you want.
Yeah.
And I do think it gets really tricky and can take individual work when you're talking about sports where appearance and
Yeah.
performance can be
Judgment and
tightly linked, and that hopefully is managed well by the adults in the system. Sometimes it's not, right? I'm sure you've seen that. I mean, what have you seen?
Well, that it just reminds me of my conversation with Lauren Fleshman, who is like an elite runner, and we talked a bit about kind of body image and in her book also, and how so often for runners they get to an unhealthy place because they're trying to meet weight, right? And the coaches and adults that are in charge don't really know how to manage that.
Yes.
Right. And so, like you said that education is a huge piece of it, not only for the athletes, but for coaches, right? Because women's bodies are going to react differently than men's bodies when trying to cut, make weight, gain weight, like that, all that kind of stuff. And so it just kind of brought back that for me, right? And like, what are some ways that female athletes can build, I guess, let's say that there's a female athlete, right? Let's say a runner, gymnast, like something where the body, and I know the body is so much a part of every sport, obviously, but where you're kind of judged on your body and your weight directly affects your performance. Like, how can those girl athletes start to build like a healthier relationships? Like, do you have any like strategies or any stories of athletes that you've worked with in any sport, I guess? But yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, I think anytime you are in, a performance mode, when you are going through, championships or a lot of competitions, that's probably the not a good time to work on this kind of stuff, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
it
yeah,
requires,
right. For sure.
safety experimentation when not everyone's looking at your body right when things aren't on the line.
Yeah.
But I'll just tease out how we work with it in just as a human.
Yeah,
With
totally.
body image. And then I think it's like anything, you sort of figure out how to use it. But I think developing a relationship with your body image is a great place to start. And one of the things that we really like to look at is, instead of you just have your body image and it's like always the same, it spikes, and you can have what we call bad body image moments. And everybody has bad body image moments. And when we bring some curiosity to our bad body image moments versus automaticity to our bad body image moments, we can train different muscles. And I use those terms on purpose because particularly as athletes, we understand we're always training something, whether it's conscious or unconscious, whether it's leading us to a better performance or a worse performance, whether that's like literally our technique with our sport or our thoughts. We're always training something. So it's only one of the chapters. There's a lot of different steps to our book, but when you have negative body image moment, very often there's an emotion that might have triggered that, right? Like, I have a competition coming up, or I didn't perform well in that practice, or whatever. And the problem is body image has become a catch-all in our culture. If I change my body, everything will be fine, right? And very often, particularly if you're in a weight-restricted sport, that's a compelling strategy, right? So, I have a bad practice, or I have a feeling, or whatever it is, or the guys team's going to be watching my practice, or the girls team's going to be watching my practice, whatever it is, uncomfortable feelings, I'm going to fix my body. I'm going to make a plan to fix my body, diet, exercise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I get out of that uncomfortable feeling temporarily. Chances are I may get rewarded for it. Like, oh, you're so disciplined. Good for you. And I've laid down the pattern of not dealing with that initial, that feeling. And I've laid down this pattern of if I fix my body, then I will get a different outcome. And when we train that unconsciously, year after year, as I did, over and over again, well, guess what? We're going to often think that changing our body is a solution to all sorts of things that may have had nothing to do with it at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, that's where the term inside out comes from, right? It's the same thing. If you think that, once I get a scholarship, like my anxiety is going to go away, right? It's attaching your thinking that fixing something outside of you is going to change how you feel inside. And that's not how it works, right? So for in life and this, it's like you have to work inside. Once you work on your relationship with yourself, with your body, then the outside will change. And you don't have to feel like you need to fix your body. And you don't have to fix your body because you've created the relationship with yourself to where that's not necessary anymore, right?
Or a more likely outcome, a more realistic outcome is, I'm having the thought that I want to change my body. Ooh, what's going on for me?
And then you can dive into it.
Well, and then I can walk you through the steps that we ask, the muscles we ask people to practice. Because to this day, I'm 51, I still do this. Like, I should change my, wait, what are you going to, really, Whitney? Like, is that what's really going on? Right? It's so ingrained, but I still go, I have an uncomfortable feeling. I'm going to change my body. But then I go, wait.
But you can kind of stop yourself and.
So the new muscles, rather than fix myself, make a plan, execute the plan, whatever, is, let's just name the situation. So, I have left Boston in the middle of winter, and I am somewhere warm, and I am in shorts and a t-shirt, and I'm having really negative thoughts about my body and that I should change it. That's very different from, Whitney, you're so gross. You need to get on a diet. You need to exercise more. You need to blah, 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 blah. Those are two very different things. We're just naming it like a reporter. Right? So you might be like, I have a big competition coming up, and I am obsessing that if I look different in my uniform, that I might win. Right? So you're just naming the situation rather than there's something wrong with me.
Got it.
Naming,
just kind of being aware of what's happening.
You're naming kind of what feels wrong. And then the next thing is you get curious. And I call it outside curiosity and inside curiosity. So what's happening on the outside that's different? You know, in my case, like, I'm no longer wearing a sweater and snow pants, right? I'm wearing very different clothes. I'm looking at other people's bodies, right? That's a different context. And then, you know, for your athlete, it might be like, I've got a competition coming up and the stakes are high and I'm really anxious. And then the inside curiosity is, and this is one I ask myself a lot, Whitney, what would be different if you, had a six-pack and you were walking around the pool? What would actually be different about your experience with life? Right. And usually I'm like, well, I'd have a six-pack and I'd be walking around the pool, but actually
you'd feel good for a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so true. I love that. Yeah.
So, and then the athlete could say, well, if I, whatever, looked this way in my uniform, I think I'd win. Oh, well, is that actually true?
Is that true?
Like, so you just, but you get to get really clear about, so you get to sort of test your narrative. Are you full of it or not? And you also get to get really clear, like, oh, maybe I'd feel more confident. God, I'd really like to feel more confident. Or, I'd feel, more authoritative. I'd feel stronger, whatever it is. But when you get curious about what you want to feel more of, that's what you want. And that's about you. And that's really helpful information. And then the last thing is to just bring compassion. Like, oh, Whitney, it's hard to go from snow pants to, shorts. This happens to you every single time. You get critical of yourself. Like, this is just a thing that always happens to you. Sorry, it's hard, right? Or, ooh, the stakes are really high for this competition. And you're really obsessing about your body because you really want to win. It feels really important to you. And that feels hard to be that vulnerable. So we call it mindful awareness, curiosity, and compassion.
I love that.
And those things are very different from there's something wrong with me and I need to fix myself. So those are the muscles we like to offer folks to train differently. And like I said, like when you're in the heat of a competition, that's not a good time probably to practice
in the middle of a game or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But something anybody, athlete or not, can practice.
I mean, I love that. I'm thinking back to an experience like same as yours, right? Like go to Hawaii in the middle of January and I put on my swimsuit and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so white. Like my legs are white and they're hairy and like nothing's looking good, right?
Right.
And then I can just like, I love the, like, let's get curious about, the outside, right? And like, would that really change anything? And then going inside. And I think that's just so important for those little moments, right? Because we all have maybe bad body image days, but more often it's like just these little moments that come in, right?
And I love for people to practice with themselves and their friends, right? So if like somebody's getting ready for a date and they're like, I can't find anything to wear and everything's on the floor and I don't look good in anything. And you're like, you're having a bad body image moment. That's all.
And then like kind of walk them through those steps.
Yeah, because our body can, feel like if we get it right, we don't have to feel vulnerable.
Go deeper into that.
Well, let's take the date example or a job interview.
Yeah.
And a time when nailing the right outfit feels particularly important, right? And the right outfit can be the right body image, the same thing, right?
Right.
And I got this lesson. I'll tell you a story of where I got this lesson. This was years ago, and I was having a conversation with this woman who looked like she could not have cared less about like fashion or, looking a certain way. And, she could have been like Mr. Rogers' sister, like that sort of the vibe I was getting. And she was telling me this story of a time when she had to show up for a colleague whose child had died, like high stakes. And she was going to the funeral and she was like, I can't find anything to wear. And I just sat down on the bed and I put my head in my hands and I cried. And then I realized I don't know how to show up for this colleague. This is overwhelming to me. And we all tend to do that. If I get the outfit right, then I can somehow not have to feel vulnerable on a date. I can not have to feel vulnerable in an interview. And the reality is we feel vulnerable. And sometimes that is overwhelming, and we put all that anxiety into the right outfit and thinking that if we get it right, we won't have to feel it. But there is no right, and there is no exit strategy from vulnerability, right? It's attending to our vulnerability then saying, and there's different strategies, the good enough outfit, an outfit that makes me feel comfortable, an outfit that makes me feel like me. I do think our closets can be something we can be in a relationship with in a healthy way, but when they hold more power than they actually have, then that's where I think it gets out of whack. So what do you think about that?
I mean, I love that because I'm thinking to, and even like, let me backtrack for a sec, but even like you said, the perfect outfit, right? Like if I have the perfect outfit, then it'll take care of X, Y, Z. Same thing if I have the perfect body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like outfit, body, interchangeable. But I'm thinking like when you said relationship with your closet, like for me growing up, I always had such a tough relationship with clothes because I always wanted to wear more like boys' clothes, right? I wanted to go shop in the boys section. And, like early on, my mom wanted me to shop in the girls section. And she quickly like was like, okay, let's, I'll let you kind of go where you want. And there was phases of my life where I dressed more girly and more boyish. But it was just always such a hard thing for me to like, I was like, number one, I didn't feel comfortable in like girly clothes.
Well, and when I didn't feel comfortable.
Yes, I didn't feel like myself.
Yes, that is so important when it comes to clothes. What feels aligned?
Yes.
What feels true to you? So keep going. I just want to
I mean, that. Just like even now, like putting on a dress, like and looking at myself in the mirror, I would hate it.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
It just like, it doesn't feel like me. And that's a reason why I also cut my hair is because the long hair didn't always, when it was a bun, it felt like me. But when it wasn't in a bun, it didn't feel like me.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's hair, clothes, kind of similar thing. But yeah, I didn't feel comfortable in girls' clothes. But then I also was like self-conscious of why is there a girl shopping in the boys section? Right. And so it was always just a tough, like I didn't want to buy super boyish clothes, but not super girly clothes. And I had a hard time ever finding clothes that really fit who I am and who I was. And that's still something that I kind of struggle with unless I'm wearing like athletic clothes. Yeah.
And I love that you brought that up because I think in today's day and age, like body positivity to people means like I have to have positive regard towards my body or I'm not doing body positivity right. And we have a very different outlook, which is like, oh, let's be curious about where we don't have body positivity, but in the service of alignment, in the service of what feels right for me. And that's where clothes, I think, are so powerful. Just like you were said, this doesn't feel like me. And you're going to, how can you have good body image if you're wearing something that doesn't feel like you?
Even if you're getting compliments about it, it still isn't going to feel right. Yeah.
Exactly. Right? And that leads to, our performance self, or that leads to shape shifting, which isn't our authentic shape. And we are going to feel the most peace inside of ourselves when we've got that alignment. So that's why we think closets and clothes and hair and style and colors are really powerful, because it's a way to find alignment with ourselves.
What do you find is like, so let's just go through a scenario, I guess, right? Like, let's say that there's a teenage girl. She's trying to get ready for school and she's just frustrated. Nothing looks good. She doesn't look good in anything, right? Which we can call a bad body image moment, right? But in that moment, and maybe that you've already gone through the strategies, but like, if the clothes aren't there, she doesn't have time to go shopping. What does she do? What does she work on? What does she ask herself? How does she kind of move through that to where she can get to a point where she can go to school and feel comfortable in what she's wearing?
And, being a teenager, as we can all relate, like that's
hard.
That's like, again, trying to do this work at a competition, right? It's like when the stakes are highest and everybody's wearing the same thing and you don't even know what you're trying to look like, right? It's like you just know it's not right. But I do think that curiosity, like, what isn't feeling right? What's your day like today? What would it feel like to, what do you want to feel when you walk out the door? What are you going for? Just bringing a lot of curiosity. What doesn't, when you say it doesn't feel right, how does it feel? And how do you know that's not right? So I think teaching that teenage girl not to just go to the default, I'm not right.
Yeah.
Go to say, what's not right about this situation or about the day or how I'm feeling, and just bring a lot of curiosity and compassion to the situation. I just think that's a very different strategy than how a lot of us were taught to deal with our bodies. What do you think?
I mean, I think that's, well, first off, I think that's a beautiful way that that a parent, right, can, if they notice their child like struggling with that, like just asking those questions out of curiosity. Hey, why do you feel this way? How do you want to feel? I think can be really great, because like I can think of times when, you know, my wife is putting on clothes and she's like, oh, I don't feel good in this. I'm like, it looks great. Like, and that's probably not super helpful, right? Like, it's probably more helpful to ask some of those questions.
Or to say, do you want my opinion, or do you want me to help you? You know, you can ask that, right?
Ask, do you want me to say anything? Do you want me to keep quiet? Like that kind of thing. But yeah, I think I like that, again, the curiosity thing, because when you're curious, you're not being harsh and critical of yourself, right? You're investigating the feelings.
And I have kids, and when, you know, they're doing some of the behaviors that we're talking about, like, you know, there's a part of me that wants to be like, are you kidding me? I've done everything to make sure you, what? You know,
right.
But I, if I practice what I preach, I have to get very like soft in my energy and very curious, and just not make a big deal out of like, oh, well, you know, what do you think you 6-packs get you? And oh, what do you think? Da, da, da. Huh. Where did you learn that? You know, just being curious, not like, what are you? You're nuts. This is
just put on the dang shirt. I can just picture, like, just put it on. We gotta go, right? Yeah. So I'd love to hear. Do you have any like stories? And I know that, you know, you can't share like all the details, but do you have any stories of any athletes or you know, non-athletes, but athletes that you've worked with who have really kind of transformed their relationship with their body and their mindset around their body image?
Well, I could talk about myself.
Yeah, let's start there. That's the best place to start, right?
And I think, you know, I think as athletes, we tend to think like, oh, okay, I need the training plan to have a better body image. Ah, here we go.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, and for some people, maybe it's a straight shot, or I'm going to do a little bit more of this and things change. For a lot of people, it's a journey, and it requires layers and different ways of working. And I like to, so what, you can edit this out, but,
You're good.
You know, when I think of how I was as an athlete, and particularly as somebody in a weight restricted sport, so I would have seasons where I was sort of my aspirational self, and then the rest of the year when I was trying to get back there or thinking I should be there or whatever. And many years of just being in the cycles that I've named, there's something wrong with me. And if I get my body to this, you know, it's in athletics. If I'm this strong, or if I'm winning these many races, or if I look this way and I weigh this much, you know, then I am okay. And I did that loop for years and years and years. And, you know, I think there's so much more help available, and there's so much more research, and people don't have to be in those cycles. But I feel like I like to say to people, you know, there's eating disorders and there's negative body image, and it all exists on a continuum. But if you are, I mean, I was so uncomfortable in my skin. Like I rarely felt comfortable. That's when you want to try and get support from other people. And there's a lot of different ways. I mean, you can talk to sports psychologists, you can talk to therapists, you can talk to nutritionists.
Right.
But it's not, you weren't designed to feel uncomfortable in your skin.
For
and
sure.
to not have tools for how to work with that. So, I mean, I feel like today I feel very comfortable in my skin. Do I have bad body image moments? Yeah, especially because, you know, you age. And your body is always changing. And that's why I think having the muscles to respond to your body and body image, or your performance, right? Because performance is change, is really valuable, because our bodies are always going to change throughout our lives. And there are a variety of different tools to use. It's not always the exact same ones every time.
Right.
But, you know, sometimes it is like, oh, my legs are white and hairy and whatever, and I'm going to put on some pants.
Yeah, let's just cover it up for a minute, or go shave your legs.
I'm just gonna move on. And I think there's moments to go, oh, wow, why am I so upset about not being able to find an outfit for this event that I am approaching?
Yeah.
What's actually going on here? What do you, I mean, I've said a lot about body image, and so much of it I think probably overlaps with like how people approach performance and how people regulate, and the ways that, you know, a focus on our body or a focus on performance can help us regulate and manage uncomfortable feelings like anxiety. So what's feeling similar to kind of the work you do?
I mean, a lot of it. I would say the biggest thing is I think body image is so closely tied, at least even in my experience as a teenager, is what are other people going to think? Are people going to make fun of me? I think that's the biggest kind of parallel between the work that I do and body image, is just that, like, people are going to call me fat, or they're going to think my outfit's ugly, right? And for me, like, growing up, like, right now I'd say I have overall pretty good body image, but my whole life, like, up until I would say middle school probably was the worst, because middle school is just hard. Middle school is just hard, right? But for me, it was like in my younger years, like I hated my legs, and when I say hated, I mean hated, because I had like veins in my upper legs, which you never saw that in kids, right? And I it really affected my life in terms of I would miss out on pool parties. Right? Or I would have to go buy the perfect length shorts. I didn't want them to be too long, but they had to be long enough to cover where the vein would start, you know? And so I wouldn't change in locker rooms. I would always have to cover myself when I changed, because I never wanted anyone to know that my legs looked like that. And so that was really affected my life a lot. And I got to the point, I would say, after college. In college, it still was a thing, right? But after college, now it's like, I don't really care. Like, I'm not wearing like short shorts for sure, but it doesn't stop me from like doing anything.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the question you asked was, and I just, I don't know
Well,
if
that's
it was
perfect.
relevant.
Well, but what I would say, I mean, we work primarily with adults,
Yeah.
and I thank you for sharing that story, because so many of us have a story of, you know, this is how I felt about my body, or this is what other people said about my body, and it stays in there.
Yeah.
And it informs how we treat our bodies now and think about our bodies and relate to it. And we wrote a book, but it was all based on a workshop. And what I love at the end of the day, if I could send someone to read the book or hear other people's stories, I think other people's stories are where the magic is, because you realize we all share this. And, you know, I always say body image healing is a team sport, and training negative body image is an individual sport, because we do it in our minds by
Say that
ourselves.
again?
Training negative body image is an individual sport. Like you were doing it in your head. I gotta have these shorts, whatever, right? So all these thoughts, all these, what I think other people are going to be thinking, and what I have to manage in order to be okay. But healing negative body image is something we do in connection, in relationship with other people. Because if you're in a workshop and you're going, oh, I came in here and I thought that person had the perfect blah, 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 but she doesn't like her blah, 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 but she likes that person's blah, 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 who doesn't like their blah, 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 but like that person's blah, 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 you know?
Yeah, totally.
You're like, oh, this is crazy. And just hearing the stories of what people have endured and how their body, you know, helped them manage it, and held the story.
And we really are, like a while ago when you said something like, we're not meant to be uncomfortable in our bodies, right? It just reminded me of like how much we really are taught, right? Because you take like a baby and like a toddler, like they're not thinking anything weird about their body until they're told that, right?
Yes.
Like I wouldn't have thought anything negative about my legs until I saw pictures of, you know, girls and their legs were perfect, and kids like never saw another kid with that. You know what I mean? And so like we really are meant to feel comfortable, you know, in our bodies, and there's so many things, you know, that can kind of teach us to nitpick everything and to feel like it's not okay.
And one of those things is being fed billions of images throughout our lives of a certain construct of an ideal beauty.
Yeah.
that is not even based in reality so many times because of curated images. And that shapes our brain, right? I mean, one of the things I say to my daughter, I was like, if you want to, go on Pinterest and, there's all these teenagers doing all these things, like you need to look at different body types, different skin colors. You need a variety of bodies to feed your brain. Because if you only look at one kind of body, that's going to shape.
Even if it's just unconscious, right?
Yes, that's going to shape your biases.
Yeah.
So I think that, we can't have these conversations without talking about social media because it's shaping what we think is normal, achievable versus, I always say like one of the most valuable thing about my gym membership is I get to see real bodies.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
They're real. They're normal.
Yeah. And I thought like maybe I saw it on your Instagram or maybe perhaps, but what role does like our consumerism, our Western culture consumerism play in like us and shaping like body image, saying it's not good enough, buy this thing? Like, do you see that? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we should both answer that because I'm just going to answer it as a human being, right? Like, I wrote a little poem about this that I read at our launch, like, so that we can be told.
Do you have the poem with you? Like, can you recite it, or do you?
If you give me a minute, I can get it.
Yeah, I want you to get it.
I will get it.
Got it?
Dr. Seuss meets body image poem.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it.
Let's hear it.
You ready?
Yep.
So what do I think about our consumerism culture and how it relates to our body image? My thighs are too big, my arms are too small, my face is too full, my height is too tall, my hips are too wide, my lips are too thin. It's so hard to live in this skin. We're taught to compare, critique, and to fix with a billion fancy fix-it products and plans in the mix so that we can be told through what we can be sold that nothing about us is okay as it is. And what if this desire, this hope to be seen, was helping us manage what was missing, overwhelming, or mean? We want to feel free, to feel peace in our skin. For this we yearn. What if this is something we can learn? So that's something I read at our book launch, and but that line really stands out to me, so that we can be told through what we can be sold that nothing about us is okay as it is. Because if you really think about it, all these products are all based upon us not being okay as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if we're fine, we don't need to buy anything to fix us, right?
And look at the exploding, and I'm prey to this for sure, market of like strategies for what we can do to fix aging.
Oh,
right?
Gosh, yeah. Right.
I mean, you could spend endless amounts of money and time and energy on that.
And that even goes into like the whole biohacking thing, like living forever.
Right, and that aging isn't normal. That
bad. That being old is a negative thing. But you go to Eastern cultures, and it's totally different.
It's totally different. Yeah. So we've got a lot of messaging in the culture, the American culture, that I think really encourages. I got to fix myself. I got to change myself, and if I do, then everything will be fine. And round that loop we go. And I still fall prey to that. I'm not immune to it, but I have way more tools than I used to when that happens. And I also think body work can be helpful too. And, how we move our bodies. Like as athletes, I think it's so interesting because we are using our bodies and we are embodied, but we're actually sometimes not embodied at all because we are so taught to kind of ignore a lot of our body's cues and signals.
Yep.
So what do you think about that? Are athletes embodied or not embodied?
I mean, you would think that being an athlete, you would be embodied because you have to use your body. But I think a lot of times we take our bodies for granted and what they can do, right? Like our bodies are absolutely incredible. Think of all the things that it does without any intervention on our part, right? And so I think too, like another important aspect of having a positive body image is just being grateful for your body and what it does and what it can do for you and all the places it can take you, right? Oh, the places, we'll go into Dr. Seuss again. But it is just so incredible. And I think that's also helped me in my body image too, is just really being in tune with it, listening to it, not trying to override it, and being like, wow, like I was able to climb up this mountain or ride my bike so-and-so or whatever, right? And I'm just so grateful that my body is what allows me to experience life.
Yes. And I
Right?
think it's okay to appreciate your body and have a negative body image moment. Because I think sometimes we think,
Yeah,
if
totally.
I appreciate my body, then I won't hate it,
Yeah.
as I sometimes do.
Right.
And again, like just allowing for multiple truths, you can be super grateful for it and be stuck in a bad body image moment.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
And I've done that too with, an injury, right? Where I'm grateful for it,
injuries
but
are so
then,
hard.
but then like something hurts and it's been hurting forever and I'm like just so frustrated with it. Yeah. Right. And so let's end on the injury. Let's end on the injury thing, but I want to kind of go into your book. But yeah, how do you see injuries affecting athletes' body image?
Oof. I think, an athlete gets an injury, and it can be so devastating on so many levels, right? Because they lose access to their sense of belonging with their team. Yeah. They lose access to their sometimes identity. Mm-hmm. They lose access to something that helps them regulate their emotions. And so that might threaten their body image, right? So, totally. I mean, everybody has a different response, but I think an athlete's injury can be very challenging for a high level athlete, and to treat it as such, but particularly a young athlete who maybe hasn't been through this or maybe has a lot of identity stock in their sport, athletics. Yeah. So to really support that athlete in managing that and going through that journey.
Like the physical rehab, but also like not ignoring the mental and emotional side, that's going to need tending to.
Exactly. Yeah. And making and sort of monitoring them, making sure they have support, seeing how they're doing. And, some athletes will do okay with it and just struggle, but some might have a more significant challenge with it, because it's also, it's a loss of control.
Yeah, for sure.
And that can be very threatening as well. And again, we're trying to control our body. So it's all part of this journey of being in relationship with our body that will challenge us throughout our lives at some point.
Yeah, I love that. Okay.
So what do you think about injuries? What would you say?
I was going to say I tore my ACL when I was 12. So that was like a tough time to have such an injury, and my identity was very much wrapped in that and my sense of belonging, all my best friends. But one thing that really helped me, and I encourage anyone who's injured, is continue to go to every practice, go to every game, go to every meeting. Don't just sit on the sideline, but like be as involved as you can.
Agree.
Because then it's still different. You're going to take on a different role.
Yeah.
And understand that even though you're not on the field or the court, you can still have a different role. You can become the cheerleader. You can become the coach's assistant, right? Mm-hmm. And like I would say to to go to practices, be engaged, but then find what role you want to fulfill during that injury so that you feel like you have a purpose when you actually go to practice. And that was really, really important for me as it related to like the social aspect and feeling like I still belonged.
I love everything you said about that. And to know that you can learn. You can continue to get better as an athlete because you can learn from a different vantage point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Beautiful.
Yeah. When I was injured, I would just like watch lots of videos because I was like, I want to still get better.
Right. I mean, there's still so many ways that you can get better, right? It's not the things that you would normally think of, but there's always ways you can get better. You just got to think about it differently, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to end talking a little bit more. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the book behind Whitney, The Body Image Inside Out. There it is, or she's holding it up. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about the book. I know we talked about so much stuff that's inside the book, but a little bit more about it and then where people can find it. And like, is it a good read for athletes? Is it mostly for adults? Kind of just like who is it for and who would you recommend read it?
Yeah. Well, you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your books. We wrote it with kind of everybody in mind, with this idea that everybody has a body and everybody has feelings about it. I would say that clinicians, nutritionists, folks who are working with folks who have body image challenges are probably the folks that resonate, that are most drawn to it.
Awesome.
And then just people who've had body image challenges over their lives and want a different approach. But, you know, I think that it's one of those books you can kind of pick it up and like read a chapter or two, or, you know, look at the clothing chapter or this chapter. You don't have to read the whole thing.
Okay,
but
cool.
it's just, if you're curious about negative body image, if you've struggled with it, it just offers a different way in than a lot of the other books out there. And so, those are the folks I recommend to get it. And I think when it comes to teenagers, like, I think our approach is more kind of buy it for yourself and then share the tools that resonate in your relationship with your teenager. Not that you couldn't give it to a teenager, but I think it's better suited.
I think it, you know, I would think a parent reading it, right, then has the tools to help their child. And then if, you know, they want to pass on the book. But I think that's a good point. It sounds like, a good book for a parent to read to be able to have those tools to support.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we have that. We have the Untrained podcast, right? I got the name right? Untrained podcast, and that's wherever you can get your podcast, correct?
Yep. Also on YouTube, all the different podcasts.
What kind of do you have? You have guest interviews, a lot of guest interviews on that, right?
Yeah, so we have a lot of guest interviews. We interview high-level athletes, and we interview people who are experts in their field, like a sleep expert or imposter syndrome expert or toxic productivity. So people who are also looking at how do we unlearn these patterns that have become so unconscious to try and get our needs met through performance.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And then where can people find you on social media and then also website?
Yep. So I have a website, Whitney Otto Coaching. I just changed it. That's why I had to
You're like, what is it?
My website. And you can find the body image website link and the Untrained link there. And then you can also follow me on LinkedIn, and then Body Image Inside Out is on Instagram and has its own website.
And you have local workshops in Boston, right?
Yep. So we're in Boston. Okay. We have workshops for clinicians, nutritionists, providers, and then in person also for folks who just live in bodies and want to learn some tools. So
if you're a human being and you live in Boston, then go check them out. Those are on the website as well. I've seen that. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Whitney. Like this was great. I had a lot of fun, so I appreciate the engaging conversation, and I feel pretty confident that everyone listening is going to get a lot out of it too. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I want us all to feel a little more comfortable in our bodies. I think. I mean,
we got to live with it forever until we're here, right? Might as well. We're stuck with it until we leave this earth, so might as well feel good in it. So yeah, thank you again for your time and your expertise. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Shay. I'm so glad you are in the world doing the work you are doing.
Thank you.
We're
appreciate it.